Hello.
Hello, Alicia.
Hey everyone, how's it going? So, welcome to the 19th of January, EMEA America's Kubernetes demo. So, Skarbek, you have the first demo item.
I do have a demo item, though I don't know how beneficial it is going to be showing people, but I'll share a few things, and then I think either I or Igor could share with like kind of the problems that we're kind of running into. I have been having issues with screen sharing this morning, so if my screen looks like it's frozen, just let me know and I'll restart it. Igor, at one point in time, or maybe Sean, he'll correct me, there's a Redis chart sandbox set of a repository that was put together that contains a bunch of information that we could quickly create a test environment and tear it down as necessary. So I've very much butchered this repository. So I've got, all the primary stuff that I care about, plus a lot of scripts I've been adding. The important piece here is that I'm being provided with a set of virtual machines, a Kubernetes cluster. I've got some necessary bits to help wire things together. So I've got like some method of installing the external DNS project. Everything is stood up via Terraform. And I've also got a little helper script that helps me install Redis inside of Kubernetes. So I've got a full-blown mimicry of what we have running inside of our environments, or at least what we're trying to gear towards. So one of the things that we've been looking into was trying to make it easier for testing in general, because creating merge requests and waiting for people to review and going back and forth is kind of unnecessary. I did not mean to run that one. So I have like a command called get roles, and this just goes through all the virtual machines, goes through all the pods and says, hey, what's your role? And so we get basic information such as the node that this command is currently running on, the version of Redis, because that's important for our latest variety of testing. And we get that for each one of them. So we could see in this particular case, right now I've got a 2-pod deployment inside of Kubernetes, and we've got 3 virtual machines. So we'll see all 3 virtual machines. So node 0, 1, and 2, and they're all replicas. And then we've also got our pods. So we've got, where does it start at? So pod 0, which is a secondary, a replica, and we got pod 1, which is our current primary. And he's got the list of all of the replicas available to him. What's another fun script? I have something called nodes ready. So that just tells me whether the nodes are ready or not, because the init script takes a while to load. I'm showing things out of order, my apologies. I've also got a small script called tear down VM. So if I need to make a change and I don't want to wait for Terraform, because Terraform takes a little bit longer than just running a quick G-Cloud delete the instance, I could tear down the VMs very quickly. If I remove our pods, I then need to make sure Sentinel of the virtual machines don't have any knowledge of those pods. So this effectively enables me to quickly reset the virtual machine infrastructure to a known state where only those virtual machines know about each other. So I've got a reset VM replicas command in here. So we now have a a repository. I haven't pushed this up. Like there's so many changes in here, but I now have a method that I could use to sit here and kind of tear down and respin up environments and retest as necessary. And I've been using this quite heavily the last few weeks. Now it's just a matter of making sure DNS is ultimately the method that we kind of want to go down in terms of configuring all the things together and making sure they work as desired. I know things are not quite there yet because when I do run the get roles command, we do have IP addresses show up instead of host names, which is not entirely desired. But at least I have a way to test things. I'm happy because I could test things. That's what I wanted to showcase. But I don't know how to showcase this without going through a full-blown setup, which takes time and effort. And I don't know if that's a good, wise use case of the time for this meeting. But I'll gladly answer any questions related to what I've been attempting to work on lately.
I just want to say this looks great, and it's really a step up from what we had previously using the pre-environment and kind of contaminating that environment over and over again. So having something where we can sort of experiment in isolation, I think is going to make it a lot easier to just rebuild and test different different scenarios and different configurations. And also we were, well, we started looking into this IP address business, which I'm kind of suspecting might be an edge case or some kind of bug in Redis Sentinel itself. And we'll likely need to dig into the code for that a little bit and see if we can figure out which sequence of events is causing that to be an IP address and not a host name, which we'd much rather have in that case. So yeah, I feel like we're on a good path.
Yeah, we need to keep in mind that the use of host names is a relatively new addition to Redis. It was introduced in 6.2, which is what we're currently trying to target and utilize here. And I guess some of the reasoning behind some of these decisions are the current version of the Helm chart we use. I think, Igor, you found out that when there's a failover, bad things occur, or like the right things do not occur, which in certain use cases, failover does not properly work. So upgrading to the latest version of Helm chart is certainly one method we could use to go about proving that failovers don't have issues. And during my testing a few weeks ago, as long as I'm using the latest version of chart, I never had issues. However, in the last week, the latest version of the Helm chart introduced a new bug where you can't spin up a new cluster. So there's another fun piece of information related to that, but I created an issue for that. The reason why we want to go with host names instead of using IP addresses for everything is, I guess there's two reasons for this. One, we know what we're talking to at all times because we have a host name in there instead of an IP address. We know through, as an SRE, what are Redis nodes and what are not because we allocate network address space for this, but that's going to be a little bit more difficult inside of Kubernetes land where we reserve one huge block of IP addresses for all pods. We don't have the same network address spacing methodologies inside of Kubernetes than we do with our virtual machines. So that's a kind of a big thing to account for. The second thing is a limitation provided by the Helm chart developers. So because there's some history to this, but if you go back and look at the issues associated with it, they were seeing issues with being able to talk to pods appropriately. So they decided to go with the route of using host names instead. So they've hard coded the options to force you to use host names everywhere, which is fine, but it's not configurable. So we're kind of stuck with it. And we could probably try to make it configurable, but I don't know enough about the history to feel comfortable with enough with being able to make the change, make it configurable, and then test all the things to present that as a solution for the Bitnami engineers to review. So I think going with host names is viable. We just make sure it works properly for us, which is what we're currently testing. But this also leads me to the other thought process of like, are there other methods that we should be talking about? Last year, before the holiday break, we were talking about other methods such as using console. And there's another proposed option, which I forget which off the top of my head, but like, I couldn't get console working at the time. DNS we know works. We just have some edge cases that we need to finish up working through. So I guess I want to know whether or not we are working on the right thing. If I should continue pursuing the DNS route, we still have a pull request open with Bitnami at this point. They haven't merged that yet. So we do still have that to contend with. And just other general ideas if anyone has any. This is kind of a open-ended question for anyone.
Are we at the point where we don't have other tasks or other things? So like we're not ready to make the shift anyway for at least a few weeks, right? We've got to do the Redis upgrade. We have the Bitnami chart. So if we just kind of sat on this for another week or so, like would we have other useful work we could be doing?
We're certainly not sitting. There's still plenty of work for us to work towards. I just want to make sure the priorities in my mind are the right ones to be working on. So, I'm keeping track of the pull requests we've got going on with Bitnami. With this change that we're going down and pursuing, we need to upgrade Redis, and Igor was working on a Redis upgrade procedure in general. We need to push that through all of production, through all of our environments. And we also need an omnibus upgrade as well, because omnibus is currently pointing at 6.6.0. And then we also have a configuration change that is required to enable this to work properly, which our omnibus configurations do not have. So that's another merge request inside of omnibus that needs to be brought in. So no, we are not at a point where we're out of work to do. It's more of, I just want to make sure that I'm not forgetting something or losing track of another potential solution which may solve our problems that we may be running into here.
Right. It's more a question of, are we actually going in the right direction? Is that accurate?
Yeah. Boost my confidence with this decision.
I can do that right now. So from what I've seen, this looks like the most promising and viable option. And the host names, well, for one, it's kind of the direction that Bitnami are pushing towards, but I think there's other reasons why we want to use host names as well. The reachability of Redis from outside of Kubernetes being the main one that I'm thinking of. So I think this solves more than one problem that we have. And it's not like if this doesn't work, we don't have other options. I think we can probably find some other workarounds if needed, but yeah, I think this is the most promising path that we have right now. So I think we should explore it further, and hopefully it'll work out. How's that for a confidence boost, Skarbek?
I like it.
Yeah, it sounds good. That sounds good. I think especially, like, I think maybe if we didn't have the Redis upgrade, or, we were getting much closer to wanting to action on this stuff, then, we could sort of review it. But at this stage, I think that's, we've got a bit of time.
Yeah, I think we've still got a lot of work ahead of us before we're really ready to roll this out.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Skarbek, I have a question. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, me first? Okay. So I have a question about the host name usage. So when we talk about using host name, are we talking about reassigning always the same meaningful host names, or it's more something like Redis pod random hash, and then it could, so are we using short-lived DNS entries, or they would just be regenerated and will be Sentinel business to make sure we are talking to the right host name?
So I guess I have 3 ways to answer your question. One, we are using a stateful set, so host names will always be predictable. So it's always going to be the name of the deployment. So we'll probably have like Redis hyphen cache or Redis hyphen rate limiting or Redis hyphen sidekick, something to that effect, followed by some identifier. Our Helm chart or the Bitnami Helm chart puts the word node followed by a number. And because it's a stateful set, it's going to be incremental. So it's 0 through however many replicas we have. So in this case, we're choosing 3 replicas. So it'll be a Redis node 0, a Redis node 1, a Redis node 2, etc. We are leveraging external DNS to populate DNS entries for these pods with a domain name that will be usable across our environments. So we have a DNS suffix of, say, I think it's gke.pre.gitlab.net, if I recall correctly. So what we are effectively doing is using the external DNS project. It gets the name of the pod, adds the name of the deployment, followed by that suffix. So we'll have a Redis node 0 dot a Redis dot gke.pre.gitlab.net. Those IP addresses get updated by the external DNS project. So if a pod gets removed, deleted, purged in any way, shape, or form, we have to wait for external. Well, one, we have to wait for a replacement pod to come up. It will pretty much be guaranteed to have a different IP address. So as that pod is booting, if external DNS hasn't come around and updated that DNS entry, that pod will probably keep failing until that happens. From my experience so far, external DNS runs on a 1-minute cycle. So every minute it's keeping itself up to date. That's just based on looking at logs. I haven't actually looked at the configuration. So there could be a solid point in time where for a full minute, a pod might be in a failing state before external DNS finally kicks in and says, hey, go, update the DNS entry, and then the pod will start magically working. And I have seen that problem where I've seen a pod get restarted 3 or 4 times before it finally gets up and ready to go. And then there's a third thing I wanted to say, but it took me so long to get to it, I forgot.
Okay, so I can continue with question on the things that you told me. So thanks for sharing this. Question is, do we interact with pods using those externally provided DNS names only from VMs, or even within the Kubernetes we interact using those external DNS? So the thing is, are we talking about this not reachable, this unreachability is only a matter of fact when we interact from the outside, or more widespread problem?
If I understand your question correctly, we are configuring the Helm chart to leverage the same host name that we, as clients of the Redis cluster, will utilize. So we are injecting a custom hostname entry into all of these pods, and that's part of the Redis configuration, not like a system level hostname or anything. And then that will be the same hostname that we would feed into GitLab, such that Redis is using the same hostname.
I can also add something to that. So the way that we connect to Redis is by using service discovery through Redis Sentinel. So Sentinel decides who the current primary is and is the authoritative source of that information. And so the clients will first connect to Sentinel, get from one of the Sentinels the information of who is the primary, and then connect to the primary.
Yeah, that's why I was asking about this.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead. You're still talking. No, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, and so the host name that Sentinel will give out to clients will be the external one in that case.
Okay, so that was exactly the thing that I had in mind. So they sponsored themselves with the announced themselves with the external DNS entry. So
correct.
Everything is bound to this refreshing thing that if a pod goes. Okay, but I'm just thinking, oh, this is not a real problem, because if it was a master, it's unreachable, then we have a failover event. So the master will switch to a new one that it's supposed to be healthy. And yeah, if it's a secondary, well, it's just unhealthy secondary until the DNS entry is updated again. So I think it's kind of safe, let's say.
I think so too. And the pods should be long-lived, right? So as long as the pod has been around for a minute, the DNS should at that point reflect the actual IP of that pod. So it's really more during maintenance events where we're recreating pods, where I'd expect us to run into some challenges with this. But yeah, during the normal operations, I agree with you. It's not so concerning.
Yeah. No, because I was thinking the other aspect of this that was kind of concerning is a strong word, but just was tricking my attention is that it's about TTL of those entries as well as the load on the DNS system. Because I've been in a situation with this where when I had a service discovery system that basically was killed by the number of DNS requests, because they had to keep the TTL low for the service discovery to work. And I don't remember what the service was, but it was very intensive in terms of checking the status, and those entries were just always getting asked to the authoritative DNS, and so it was kind of a DDoSing the system. Okay.
So with external DNS, we can control the TTL, which is fantastic. So I imagine we'll probably have it somewhere close to 60 seconds, because that's roughly, at least the current loop, that's how often I know of external DNS keeping things up to date.
You probably want to have half that time, because you may, and if you are very unlucky, you may end up having a 2 minutes outage instead of just one, because you have the things perfectly aligned.
Yep. The one thing I did decide to do was, because we're now adding external DNS as a dependency for this project, I created an issue such that we ensure that we complete a readiness review for external DNS, because that was never done when it was introduced to our clusters, but it was also introduced for something that's not as important as .com. So. Cool. Any other questions about Redis?
I guess just generally, like, what are our kind of next steps for the next week?
So I am continuing to test migration strategies. I'm going to try to work with Igor as much as possible to figure out if we need to do anything regarding this random IP address issue that we're running into, but we've created an issue for that. And then keeping tabs on open issues we have with Omnibus GitLab as well as Bitnami Redis. That's my goals, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wanna see if we can make some progress on this IP address thing, and I'm gonna be nudging the 6.2 Omnibus bump along, because I think that's something we just need to get ahead of, because it's gonna be a hard requirement. Yep.
Cool. Okay, sounds good. Great. Cool. Ahmad, you're up next.
Hey everyone, so quick update regards SHD. I started with the observability of GitLab SHD today. Got onboarded by Andrew to basically build the panels, and I opened the merge request, and the performance is going to be done by Igor from source code team. So basically, we are waiting. I think we have like a deadline next week to complete both, and hopefully it will be done, the observability and the performance. And then next step is to take it to production, I think. So finger crossed.
Awesome. Are source code handling the readiness review?
This is a question I don't know how to answer, to be honest. I think the readiness review Scarback left a comment regards the readiness review on the issue. I will check it, and maybe like I will know the answer for this question.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it gets completed. There's at least one open thread about performance, and I want to make sure that we are not going to drown production and kill SSH access to GitLab.com. I haven't seen any results of any sort of testing that was done in sort of staging at all, so it would be wise to have that information as part of the readiness review prior to us going to production. And I think there's one other item still left to do related to monitoring, which Ahmad, I think you said you were working on. So.
And I think to answer the question, like generally, yes, I think source code should own this as much as they can. There may be things on there that they are unable to complete, and in which case they can ask for help. But I think we should set the expectation that really, as much as possible, particularly on things like performance, like they should be completing as much of this as they can. Cool. Next week as well, Ahmad, as your release manager, like if you need help, please just ask, because you don't have to try and juggle project and release management. So, we have other people who we can either pause on this project or bring other people in to help if there's too much going on.
All right, thanks.
Awesome. Great. Henry, I was going to ask you about the dev discussion. So is there other people in this call we specifically want like have expertise? Because I just want to avoid having duplicate meetings since we have the APAC demo tomorrow.
I just put this in because Kareem raised those questions and he wanted to bring this up in the Kubernetes meeting.
In tomorrow's, though, he's got it on the agenda for tomorrow.
Yeah,
right?
So I thought because it's for tomorrow, and I'm not sure if everybody would be there then. Also, I thought I can just put it in here already, so we can start to look at this at least. But maybe the best would be to asynchronously answer on those or discuss on those questions you had in the issue. I just copied from the issue what I put here in the discussion. So just wanted to make you aware of the things that we need to consider now if you want to move registry out from dev into GKE. So this can be done async. I can just remove it from here and leave the link to the issue maybe.
Muted. It's on the agenda below. So we've got the APAC agenda just below this one. So if you add the comments there, then tomorrow, well, my morning, tomorrow UTC morning, when we have the APAC EMEA demo, we can discuss. So yeah, add questions, add comments there.
I didn't see that we have this already on the APAC one. Okay.
Cool. Cool. Is there anything anyone wants to discuss otherwise? No. The other thing is, since we do have the APAC demo tomorrow, if there's anything that you would like to see demoed or discussed with Graham, then please feel free to add it on here. So there are some things going on improving k8s workloads. You may have questions or suggestions or things that we could demo or discuss tomorrow, even if you're going to be async. So have a think about whether there's anything else that we can add into this agenda. Awesome. Okay. Otherwise, is there anything else anyone wants to bring up? No. Okay. Awesome. Thanks so much for the demos and discussions. Have a good rest of your day, everyone. Take care.